What's up, Sandals Youth? What's going on? My name is Justin Knowles. I'm the Youth Network lead, and we are so glad that you're here across all of our campuses joining us for the message. I'm so excited for this message that God's placed on my heart, and I want us to challenge it. I got a lot of content, so let's just dive right on in. Any of you guys have a friend, and most likely in every friend group you have someone like this, but there's that flaky friend. You know, I'm talking about that friend that cancels 10 minutes before any event that you have. Like, oh, dude, I can't make it. Well, in high school, I had this friend named Jeff, and he was that friend for us. He was the flaky friend in our group, or no matter what it is that we would do, he'd always cancel just minutes before it was supposed to happen. So I always tried to get him to come to all of our church events. And, you know, he wasn't a church guy. He thought I was weird for going to church. He wondered why I spent so much time at my church. And I would always try to get him involved in whatever it is that we're doing. And I'd say, hey, Jeff, come on. And he'd always tell me he'd come, but then he'd be the flaky friend and he would cancel just right before. And so we were literally about to have this big event at our church, this neon, kind of black light dance party with black light dodgeball. And I was like, Jeff, you need to come. You're my flaky friend. I called him out because that's what friends do, because I cared for him. Like, you're the flaky friend. You're cancel every single time. I need you to come. There's going to be free food. There's going to be cute girls there. I tried to do every stop that I tried to pull any excuse from him to get him to come. I was like, dude, you need to come. And he said, Justin, I promise you on our friendship, I will be there. And so I said, okay, Jeff, here we go. Let's go. So that next Sunday, I'm at church. I'm with my friend Kevin, and we're kind of setting things up. We're there early setting things up. And I get 30 minutes before this event, I get this text message from Jeff. And it said that he wasn't coming. He said, dude, I got too much homework. I can't make it. And I'm standing next to my friend Kevin, and all I do is just show him the text message from Jeff saying that he can't make it. And we just both kind of looked at each other, and we knew what we had to do. Without even saying it, we knew we had to kidnap Jeff. Okay, so what we had to do is we got in my truck, and I'm already blacked out. I'm already ready to go for the neon blacklight dance party. I'm in my shorts. I got my fanny pack. I got my neon vest on, and I got my headband, my face paint. We're good to go. Kevin's the same deal. So we hop in my truck. We drive over to Jeff's house, which is about 10 minutes away. Without even knocking, we bust open his front door. His parents knew who we were, but they screamed in their living room because they did not know that we were coming. And then once they realized that it was us, they said, oh, Jeff's upstairs. So we're running up the stairs, and same thing. It was right when the movie 300 came out, and so I was literally Sparta kicking everything. So I Sparta kicked open Jeff's door, and there's Jeff and he's just sitting on his bed playing video games. And he kind of, the door swung open, and this is what Jeff did. Ready? Here's what he and then he saw that it was us, and then he went, and he looked at us, and he's like, I'm going to church tonight, huh? And I said, yeah, you are. And we brought him all this neon stuff ready to go, and we got him into the car, and he came to church that night. Now, here's the thing. We love our friends. They're a big deal. We actually, they say, and what I tell students all the time is you are who you hang out with. So the studies have shown the 5 people you spend the most time with is who you will become. So if you want to see what your future is, just take a look at the group around you, and you're going to tell kind of what direction you're headed. And so, Jeff was a friend of mine. We care so much about our friends, or at least we say we care so much about our friends, that we want them to be involved in the things that we're involved with. And that our friends actually have so much influence on us, but at the same time, we have so much influence on our friends. And that we actually don't know how much influence we have with them until we take them alongside us, and we could begin to point them to who Jesus is, whether or not they come to church or whether or not they don't. And so tonight, I want to talk about this guy named Elijah. Now, Elijah, I'll let you read on his own. It's all in 1 Kings, but he's a prophet of God in the Old Testament. And basically, he comes alongside this guy named Elijah. So there's Elijah and Elisha. And so he's seeking after Elisha to come alongside him, put his arm around him, and show him the ways of God to take over for him. And this is what God calls us to do. This is what God calls us to do with those in your school sitting next to you all around. So I would love to read you through 1 Kings 19, starting in verse 19, and we're going to kind of dive through of what Elisha could be taught for us, challenging going into our schools. Ready? Here we go. 1 Kings 19, verse 19. So Elijah went from there and found Elisha, the son of Shaphat, not Snapchat. When I first read it, I thought Snapchat, but it's Shaphat, okay? And that he went plowing with 12 yoke of oxen, and he himself was driving the 12th pair. So Elisha, basically what he's saying, that he was rich. Anyone who has that much land, that much oxen, that Elisha, he was a rich guy, but you could tell that he was rich and he was driven because he was the one himself that was driving these oxen. And in all honesty, usually why we don't share our faith with people is because sometimes we assume that they're okay, that they got everything together, and that actually thinks that we don't need to step up and we need to extend our hand to them because we assume that they have it all together. But that's not what's happening, okay? So continuing on in that verse, Elijah went up to him and threw his cloak around him. So basically, this is him saying, hey, Pikachu, I choose you. I'm going to come alongside you. I'm going to put my arm around you. I'm going to show you the ways of God. I'm going to teach you. I'm going to come walk through life with you. I'm going to pray for you. And then I'm going to be involved with you. And in verse 20, Elisha then left his oxen and ran after Elijah. Said, let me kiss my father and mother goodbye, he said, and then I will come with you. And go back, Elijah said. What have I done to you? In verse 21, so Elisha left him and went back. He took his yoke of oxen and slaughtered them. And then burned the plowing equipment and to cook up the meat and gave them to the people and they ate. Okay, holy crap, that might seem like really intense. Could you imagine that God has called you to this thing and you go home and you kill all your pets and feed them to all your friends? That's kind of what it sounds like is happening. That is not the case. If you kind of step back, basically, he's taking away all of his excuses not to come. See, we might be looking at this going, what is happening? But here's the thing, is that we have no idea what God could do through you, through a conversation. That when you come alongside someone and bring them into whatever's happening, you have no idea what God could do through you to reach those people around you. And then it says, then he set out to follow Elijah and became a servant. So we see Elijah coming out to Elijah, putting his arm around him and saying, hey, come with me. Let me show you the ways of God. But here's the thing. We are called to do this with our friends. I think this is a good example of what it means to reach out to other people. See, do you know why? And if you're taking notes, I want you to write this down, is that I find purpose when God sends me to reach others. That I find part of my purpose, why God placed me on this planet, is that when I go out to reach others for him. See, if you've been around Christianity any length of time, you've heard this word called evangelism, meaning that you're supposed to go and share your faith. And a lot of people have an idea that evangelism's like standing up in the middle of your quad and preaching the gospel, waiting to be made fun of, or going out on the street corner and preaching the gospel. But what if I told you it's way more simpler than that? What if I told you that it's way more simpler than that and way easier to do that? But first, before I even dive into that, I want to talk about why. Why don't we go out into our schools and share our faith? What is keeping us from those things? And so here's what I would love to do. There's 3 things that I think that keep us from doing this. And I'd like to quickly go through them because I think if we could get over these 3 things, it allows us to go out and really make an affect your schools and your friend groups and your family, because it allows us, once we realize what they are, it allows us to overcome those. So if you're writing stuff down, here we go. 3 reasons why I believe we don't share our faith. First one, complacency. It's complacency, meaning that we're okay with the way things are. We don't really care if they get better or if they get worse. We're just complacent with where things are. See, listen to this. You go to school now. Everyone's back in school. You go to school 5 days a week for 8 hours a day with people who you say that you care about. With people who do not know who Jesus is, who are dying eternally, and you spend so much time with them, yet we're numb to them growing. We're numb to them not knowing who Jesus is, that we don't seem to really care. And if we're not careful, we will spend more time worrying about finishing out this school year wrong more than where our friends spend eternity. That if we're not careful, we'll spend more time worrying about finishing out this school year strong, more than where our best friends spend eternity. Now, some of you are going, whoa, Justin, pump the brakes. I liked you 15 minutes ago, but I don't like you now. I know that's a little harsh, but here's the reality, is that we have friends who we say we care about, where we know that they could get purpose of finding an eternal purpose, yet we do not share our faith because we're just simply complacent about where we are in our own faith. That Jesus gave us a great commission to go out and make disciples. Yet some of us, we treat it as if it's the great suggestion. Or some of us, we treat it as if it's the great, if the opportunity presents itself. But that's not what Jesus calls us to do. See, Elijah had done so much in his time before going to Elisha that he could go out. He could have been complacent, but he wasn't. He continued to reach out and put his arm around Elisha and continued to pour into them. Here's the second thing that keeps us from doing this. It's comfort. Comfort. That this comfort, I'm not gonna lie to you, I love to be comfy. When I go to hotels, we're on vacation with my wife, I put on the bathrobe that comes there. Do I wear it down to the continental breakfast? Heck yes, I do. Does it embarrass my wife? Heck yes, it does, but it's comfy. Do I wish that I was wearing my stretchy pants and wearing my Ugg slippers? Heck yes, I do, because they're so comfy. It's like walking on clouds, okay? I love to be comfy. And if we're not careful, we could be too comfortable in our faith. And here's the truth, and we can be honest, it's uncomfortable to talk about Jesus. It's uncomfortable to share your faith sometimes. It's uncomfortable to bring up your faith in conversations because we're worried about certain things. And here's the thing, I was trying to figure out why. Why is it that we do not share our faith? And I think it's because of this when it comes to comfort, is that we care more about what they think about us more than what Jesus wants to do in their life. We care more about what our friends think about us more than what Jesus wants to do in their life. Could you imagine what could happen if we were to push out of our comfort zones and actually bring up Jesus and our faith to our friends? Let me ask you something. What if someone's eternity could change on the other side of a potentially awkward conversation? What if someone's eternity could change based on the other side of a potentially awkward conversation and what if they never meet Jesus because of a conversation that we were not willing to have? So comfort could get in the way of sharing our faith. Comfort could get in the way of having our friends, our best friends, people who we say we care about, not come to know who Jesus is. See, Elijah had it made. He had everything he needed. He had the land, he had the livestock, he had all the things. Yet God still moved in him to follow Elijah, and he could still be used by God. See, I've also noticed that when I'm uncomfortable, that's when God tends to show up the most. That's when I'm determined on leaning on God even more when I am uncomfortable. And the third thing that I think that keeps us from sharing our faith is selfishness. Plain and simple, it's selfishness. Here's a question. I think it's a big one when it comes to this, and it's, am I willing to give up my plans for his plans? Am I willing to give up my plans for his plans? Because it's not only a huge question, it's a daily question, and I hate this question because I love my plans. I'm not gonna lie to you. My plans are freaking awesome. They are really good. When my friends and family, when they have something that they need to be planned, guess who they come to? Me. You know why? Because my plans are great, right? That's what I do. I'm really good. I'm a good planner when it comes to those things. And what I've noticed that all of my plans stem from my selfishness. Like, I know that I'm not alone in this. I know that there's selfish people in the room. Like, I know like everyone has a spot in their house, right? That's your comfy spot. Like mine, it's the L shape in my couch. Like no one else sits there. No one else sits there. You got it? Right? Like no, that's my spot. And the reason why is because I'm just a selfish person. And here's the thing. I think that these are the things that keep us. They keep us from that we're complacent. We don't really care if they're growing or not. We're too comfortable, meaning that we are afraid to get uncomfortable, or at their core, we are selfish, that we don't like doing something that Jesus commands us because simply we just don't want to do it. Now, as we fall into those things, and I fall into those things even as a pastor, like when we read this passage about Elijah and Elisha, we see how intentional Elijah was with Elisha. That he didn't know what God was going to do. He didn't know what his response was going to be. All Elijah did was be obedient to God and allowed him to be used. That Elijah came to Elijah and he put his arm around him, walked with him through his life. And guess what, students? This is what we're called to do. This is what we're called. We're called to do the same with that one friend who you know does not follow Jesus. That's who we're called to do that with. Why? Because I find purpose when God sends me to reach others. That I find my purpose when God sends me to reach others. That you have zero idea what God could do through one intentional conversation. You have no idea what God could do through one intentional invitation. But here's what I do know is that when we follow through on what Jesus commands us to do, that we will see God work through us in ways that we've never experienced before. So my friend Jeff, he came with us to church that night. He had a great time. He loved it. But here's the thing, nothing crazy happened. Nothing happened. He didn't come to know Jesus that night. He didn't have a life-changing experience that night. But what happened is that he thought church was a certain way, experienced something way different. He found a community of people, and he came back, that we invited him back. Once he saw what it was about, he came back. And then he came back another week. And then he came every month. And then he was plugged into our community group. And then he came to summer camp. And then at summer camp is when he came to know who Jesus truly was. And his life was forever changed. See, we don't know what could happen. We don't know. My question to you, who is your Elisha? If evangelism is not going out and speaking to everybody, but if it's just focusing on one person this year that you know who is far from God that you could bring near to God, who is your Elisha? Who is your Elisha where you could come alongside, be intentional with, let them know that you're praying for them, invite them to the things that you have going on your campus, invite them into your community group. Who is that one person that could come to know Jesus by the end of this year if you were just simply intentional with their time? Intentional with your relationship. Our hope is that we can help you see your role to invest in others and that your story could be a part of their story that could change their eternity. So watch what God could do when we obey him in this one thing. So my question to you as we end our time, who's your one? Who's the one person you're investing into this year that you're gonna literally call and invite continually to come on Wednesday nights? So right now your youth lead's gonna come back up and they're just gonna wrap up the night before we head out into our D groups.